everybody. Welcome to Dead Buddy with Dan Orford. Like and subscribe. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that at the beginning or the end or both. I don't know what the highest EV is for the like and subscribe portion of this. But anyway, got our great guest for you today, folks. Mike Zulker is back for his third visit. And Mike now moves in first place for the all-time visits. He was tied with Brent Jenkins. They both had 2. 2 plus 1 is 3. So Mike is now at the top of the leaderboard once he starts talking. If you don't know who Mike Zulker is, or if you haven't heard of him, or have never listened to him, I'll give you a little background about him. He's a boss. He's 1 year younger than me. He's 40, and he's... when you're going through the video game, you get to the end of the level, you got to beat the boss, you got to beat Mike. I'm a boss too, but I occur a little bit earlier in the video game. As you get to the harder levels, then you get to Mike. Mike won a Triton event last year for $157,000. I think the buy-in was around $5,000. He came in second place at the PLO main event last year, the 10K, hit that for about $930,000. These last couple of years, he's been moving to the head of the class in tournaments, but I think I'll let him tell you more about it. So, Mike, welcome back to the studio. Let's recap your World Series for us. How did it go?
Well, it's a pleasure to be back and make my third appearance here on the Dead Money podcast. And I just want to tell my good buddy Brent, get fucked. No, I ran into Brent recently. I love Brent. And we were joking how we're just going to rotate back and forth for years to come on most appearances on the pod. But I always enjoy listening to the pod, and especially when Brent's on. He's very entertaining, very insightful. Yeah, so it was actually not a Triton, but it was a Poker Masters event at the Poker Go studio. Tritons are all the Asian end bosses that compete all across the world with the Richard Youngs and stuff. I haven't reached that level of the video game yet, but
good research on my part. All right.
But the World Series is just finally over for me. Actually, I didn't play a lot of tournaments this summer. That was originally the plan. You know, I had a pretty good year in tournaments last year, started the year pretty well this year. My focus has kind of been a lot on tournaments the last couple of years, and, you know, I've been lucky to have some success that way too. But I was given an opportunity right before the WSOP started to start hosting the cash game that I've been playing the last 2 years at the Aria. And I started doing that tentatively in April and been doing it since. So we run a big game at the Aria, usually on table 1 in the glass room, formerly Ivy's room, at nighttime, called the MBN game, the Must Be Nice game, with 2 other guys. And it was formerly 4 of us, but we recently got rid of one of the other partners and trimmed it down to just the 3 of us. And the game's really good. It's a lot of good action, a lot of good vibes. A lot of pretty famous people have come in and out of our game over the years. Nick Wright from Fox Sports Net plays our game. Sean Deeb, Tom DeWan, Doug Polk, Phil Hellmuth, Jennifer Harmon, David Baker. We have a lot of just legends of the game that come in and out of our game and grace us with their presence. And then, of course, just a ton of regular successful businessmen that prefer to remain anonymous for the most part, but just a lot of interesting personalities. So I spent the better part of my summer running that game, playing that game, but I did manage to squeeze in 9 tournaments. I would say it was a successful summer by most standards. I made a final table in the tag team event, which was really, really fun, actually, because I did it with one of my first good friends in poker, and he's still one of my best friends today. He's actually my son's godfather, Ryan Franklin. And it was a cool experience because Ryan and I, like 17 years ago when we met, joked around about one time making a big final table together, but we never thought we'd be doing it actually together. And the tag team is where you have a partner and you guys can rotate on and off throughout the World Series event and have the opportunity to, you know, I can play for a while, and then he can play for a while, and then I can play, and so on. And you just tag in and out, kind of like a wrestling match for those that remember WWF. And I actually asked Ryan if he wanted to play with very little intention of playing much of it myself. Ryan hadn't played any events over the summer. Ryan's a pretty successful tournament player in his own right. He doesn't have as much volume. He took a lot of years off. Hasn't really played full time for many years, but he is talented and somebody I talk hands with a decent amount and share insights with. And I think in these open field events, he's still a favorite. He's recently just cashed his second in a row main event, I believe, or 3 out of 4, something like that. He's played the main event, I believe, 4 times and cashed all 4 times. So he's a main event specialist. And he played almost all of day 1. I played 2 orbits, and then he played all of day 2. And then I came in on day 3 to try and relish the glory. And I took us from like 22 players down to the final table, and then we kind of rotated in and out from there. Unfortunately, our run fell short in 6th place, but it was a cool experience. It would have been a really fun one to win because of the fact that we were such good friends for so long, and to like share a bracelet win, it's the only event you can do that in. The money's not even that much. It's $190K up top, which of course is like still serious money in the real world, and that's split amongst 2 of you, but we ended up cashing for like $35K for 6th, but it was still fun. I mean, a $1K investment, and honestly, just a lot of fun to go deep with Ryan. He played great and kept us afloat, so that was cool. I also cashed my 3rd straight main event, my 6th out of 12 overall. Yeah, thank you. I recently heard your podcast recapping some of your career and your big main event run, which I remember pretty well.
Well, it could have been a big main event run. It was big enough. That actually reminds me of a story I'll get back to in a second. So I was going on and on about Jacob Balsiger coming in 3rd place, the guy who puts this just lifetime devastating beat on me. And then as we get to the final table, Mike hits me up. He's like, hey, I was invited to go join Jacob on his rail. Like, do you care if I join? I was like, look, I'm not going to be one of these fucking sappy self-righteous babies. Like, I didn't give a shit that he wanted to go, that he was invited to go on the rail. I was like, yeah, go sit on the rail. I don't care. I'm already knocked out of the fucking tournament. Like, I thought it was funny that he would even ask, that he even asked permission. I was like, you don't even have to do that. It's okay. You could just go watch.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that. For those of you who don't know, I was actually being staked by Dan at the time. I think it was 2012, and
oh, yeah.
he was backing me at the time, which is why I asked, because he took a horrendous beat. Obviously, he shared with you guys, you know, the 3s versus King Jack on King 10-3, I believe. Is that right?
Yep.
He came running jacks, if I recall.
Oh, God.
And
that second Jack winked at me.
And he still managed the cash, which is pretty impressive. But, yeah, Jake went on to get 3rd. And Jake's from Arizona, and I grew up in Arizona. That's where I cut my teeth in poker. So we had a lot of mutual friends. I had left Arizona before he started playing. He was only 21, but I had left after Black Friday about a year and some change before. So some people asked me, hey, do you want to come sit on the rail? You know, you have good live reads. You've kind of been around the game. I wasn't really a tournament player at the time. I had a few runs, but I went and did it because it was a cool experience and fun, and he ended up getting 3rd. And I did ask Dan if he felt comfortable, because I knew that he was pretty devastated, as understandably so, because you only get so many opportunities to go deep in the main event, and these are the hands that you never forget. I remember every single hand I ever busted in the main, all 12 times, I'm pretty sure. I'd have to recollect some of them, but some of them stick out very clearly to me, and it never really goes away. I mean, I wouldn't say it just always hurts, but when you start bringing it up and thinking about it, you know, the pain of some of the crucial bust outs definitely come back. And, you know, that was a big hand for him. And you never know what's going to happen. It was day 3 when that hand happened. He could have easily just
95% for the fucking chip lead on day 3 of the main event. Like, this is not like a fucking, you know, little sit and go online for like $9 here.
Yeah, that's a brutal beat. And it's definitely one of the tougher beats amongst my friends in the main event. Especially given you get to see the result. You know, you get to see what happens in that exact, you know, time warp, you know, where Jake goes on to get 3rd. Dan, I believe you busted, what, day 4 or day 5?
Day 4, 371. Yeah. When I saw Jake still there with 2 tables left, I almost fainted.
And I understand that. I had an interesting hand a couple years ago with Faraz Jaka. We were in day 2 of the 1500 shootout, which unfortunately the World Series took away this year. That's actually my favorite event. Before the 10K PLO, that was always my favorite event. And I'm on day 2, so I've already made the money, and now you're on your second table, and there's 7 of us left, and now if you win this table, you make the final table. So you're not far from winning a bracelet, and Jaka is a pretty well-known tournament pro. He has a coaching site, all these things, but I'm pretty familiar with him. He's not so familiar with me, and just comes a hand where he opens 7-handed, and I call out of the big blind. I have ace-9. It comes ace-9-7, I believe, or ace-9-3, 2 diamonds. I check raise the flop. He calls. Turn is a 4 of diamonds. I overbet jam. He calls. He has ace-4. So I have ace-9 on ace-7-9. And he has ace-4, and the turn is a 4. And then we get it all in, and the river is a fucking 4. And
Tough
it
game.
was it was for the chip lead at the table. Of course, like, there's still a lot of play left, but I would have been in good position to win the second table. Instead, I go out, and he's overwhelming chip leader at the table. He goes on to win the table, and he goes on to win the entire tournament and win the bracelet. So when I watch him win the bracelet the next day, it was painful because that's a really, really bad beat, and you just don't forget those because you just can't help but think.
Was that hand on his trading site?
No, but he did tweet about it. He tweeted about a very lucky hand when he won the bracelet in his speech. He was like, I got really lucky on this hand on day 2. And then I commented on it. I was like, yeah.
Oh, wow, what a lucky hand.
I was like, who was that against? And, we don't really know each other that well, but he laughed about it or whatever. But you just remember these types. So, when Jake did that to Dan, I definitely recall it. And, this year's main event for me was kind of frustrating because I had a really, really good table on day 2. And I was in a position where I could get a lot of chips early. I had one good player on my left, Cherish Andrews, and everyone else at the table was pretty subpar. And I had a pot against one of the, let's say, fun players of the table who was getting after it, and we played a massive, massive pot, which would have put me as one of definitely the chip leader of the table, probably not overall chip leader in the main, but like up there where I had a lot of chips. And he basically got it in with a naked flush draw. He flopped top pair and a flush draw, and I flopped a straight. And I had a spade in my hand, which was his suit. So he rivered a spade, and I was still alive, and I still was able to battle. But if I had won that pot, I would have had a lot of chips at a table where I could very much abuse the table. And unfortunately, it didn't go my way. And then I managed to... I'm sorry, that was day 3. I thought that was day 2. That was day 3. I managed to stay afloat, and then later in the day, I ended up going to another table where Brian Yoon, a pretty popular tournament player, is at the table, and he just has all the chips. And I go to put my backpack, down. I'm carrying like a charger and some water and some snacks and all that, looking like a typical WSOP grinder. And before I can even get my backpack off my shoulder, I'm in a hand where Brian, who has all the chips, opens under the gun, and I look down and I have ace-queen suited. And Brian opens, and I decide just to flat. So we end up in a hand where I just call, and Brian ultimately makes a flush. He makes the nut flush on me where I flop a queen, the turn's an ace, I have top 2, and then the river's a spade, and he leads, and I pay it off. And he just wins a massive pot. I don't even have my ass in the seat, and I've just lost a third of my stack versus a very capable, very, very good player who's capable of bluffing and also just has a lot of chips.
How close were you to folding?
I thought about it, but if I didn't know who he was, I do probably fold, because in the main event you can make some bigger folds. I mean, the flush did come in, but I didn't think that he would check call flush on the turn because it was a front door flush draw, but the turn was the ace, and he had an ace with spades, so it kind of made sense once I saw his hand. I didn't really think that he'd just check call like a flush draw, because it's just not really a good play at a position. I thought he would like check raise at some point if he had just a naked flush draw, but specifically the ace high flush draw is the one that makes sense.
Was it one of these spots where we face a bet on the river, or even before the river, and you're tanking for a little while, but like your mind has been made up pretty much the whole time? It's like in your mind you snap call, but you take about 45 seconds to do it. Like, I would say
like that? I would say so. I mean, I obviously want to go through the motions and think about the hands he can have and the range he can have, and I want to like look at him, and he's a pro, he's a good pro. He was not really giving a whole lot of info up. I mean, it was kind of one of those perfect storm situations. Like, he had a pile of chips. And when I say a pile, I mean like he was top 3 in chips in the main event when I sat down. And I was like just below average or something like that, but I still had plenty because the main event is so deep. You don't need to be a chip leader to make it. I'm very confident in my abilities to maneuver in the main because I don't get worried because I'm below average stack. I don't think about things that way. I don't care what the average is all that much.
You have a lot of chips still.
Yeah. You know, an average could be 50 bigs and you've got 40, so who gives a shit?
You're fine at 40 bigs.
Right.
Yeah.
So I looked at it like, well, he's very good and has a lot of chips, but just because he has a lot of chips doesn't mean he's just going to punt him off. But I don't have a ton of experience playing with Brian. I've played with him a handful of times. I know he's very good, but I know he's not just like punting it off, overly aggressive, just always running it. But at the same time, the way the hand plays out, I mean, I'm pretty under-repped having top 2. I didn't 3-bet him pre, because I had just sat down and was getting my stuff off, and I think it's a fine spot to flat given stack sizes. He opened under the gun, I believe, maybe under the gun 1, and I was next to act. So my hand's pretty under-repped. He can still have worse for value. It didn't really make sense, to be honest, that he would lead a spade. I mean, that was kind of the part that didn't really make a lot of sense. So, looking back,
ace, queen, ace of spades.
Yeah, I mean, looking back, maybe I could find a way to fold, and I think I would have versus most opponents, but it's just one of those hands. Sometimes you just have to die. Sometimes you have to lose. I still had a decent amount of chips, but it kind of put me on my back legs where I had to start playing more protective, playing more defensive because the bubble was coming. You make the money in early day 4 now, and part of that is the production process. We probably would have made the money on day 3 if they allowed us to play just an extra 30 minutes. We finished, I think, 7 away, but they want to make a whole production process of recording the bubbles and the all-in hands and all that fun stuff for social media and ESPN. Now the World Series is back on ESPN. So I had to just kind of sit there for the last 2 hours and fold a lot. And I had one spot that I'll think about for a while where I had about 15 big blinds at the time. We're about 50 to 60 from the money, but they're dropping fast. And it's enough, these are long levels. It's enough to fold through and then make the next day and still make the money. I know that if I just fold out, I'm going to make the money, almost certainly. It'd be hard not to. But I'm not just there to make the money. I mean, I'm in my 12th main event. I want to win the main event one year. I want to make the final table. I want to get deep. I've had several friends make the final table, have deep runs. And, I don't want to just act cocky and say, well, I'm not here to min cash. And that's somewhat true. However, it's still a $15,000 bubble and, $25,000 swing on whether you make 15, get 15,000 or lose 10, so yeah. It's still real money. And I still like to play properly when it comes to ICM. I'm not rich enough to use the ICMs for poor people thing yet, so maybe one day. But I had a spot where it folds to Brian. He's got all the chips, and I've been players are now tanking a little bit because, and when I say tanking, I'm taking 12 seconds a hand. Some guys on tables are egregious, taking 2 minutes a hand, getting the clock called. I'm just trying to pass the time as much as possible to get into day 4 so we can get into the money so I can actually try to spin my stack up. So Brian obviously knows this, but he also knows who I am. I'm not super famous, but I'm also not unknown in the poker world and tournaments. So he knows me. He knows that I'm not afraid to die. He knows I'm willing to put it in if I have to. So it folds to him in the small, and I think he's just going to jam almost any 2 cards here, given the fact that, I'm starting to tank, we're so close to the money, and I think it's a fine play. He's got so many chips that if he doubles me up, it is not even a flesh wound for this guy in his stack. And he goes all in, and he looks over, and he's like, let's sweat together. And I'm like, sure, let's sweat together. You're not really supposed to look at each other's cards, but whatever. We're all in, no floors around. So I pick up my first card. It's a 6. All right, well, we're probably not really going to be able to call here unless it's another 6, and if it's a suited ace with it, we're probably got to go with it. Well, I pick up the other card. It's an offsuit ace, so I have ace-6 offsuit. Brian starts laughing. I start laughing because, we didn't think there'd be really a decision. There's so few cards that you can pick a card up next to the 6 with. So now I'm tanking, and one thing I want to note is when Brian starts laughing, he is not the type of player, I think, that would laugh if he had me crushed. So if he had ace jack or pocket eights or something like that, I don't think he would laugh like this, because I think he would like find it disrespectful. He's a really respectful guy. Whereas like some players, like maybe a Chance Kornuth or a Martin Zamani or like somebody else might just laugh even if they had you dominated, because it's a funny situation. They'd have no real empathy for like the fact that they're about to fuck you and bubble you in the main if you call. So I took that into account, thinking I definitely have the best hand, but how good do I really have it here? At best, I'm probably like 55% mostly, because even when he has like 7-9 offsuit, you know what I mean? It's like I don't have that much equity, and it's not that big of a deal to double my stack. So I had 15, but I think one was in the blind, so I think it was 14 bigs. So realistically, I really think it's one of those like,
high
yes,
risk, low reward.
Yeah, if I win the hand, I'm more in line to make a run and spin, and if I bust, I'm just out on the bubble. And, you know, again, unless he has like king 6 or queen 6 in his hand, like even when he has ace deuce, we're just chopping a lot. So
you can be playing to win the tournament without being an idiot on the bubble.
Right, exactly. And it was going to make opportunities more scarce if I don't take this spot. But of course, given I didn't get any more opportunities, I ultimately settled on a fold. I'm still not positive if it's right. I mean, most of the people I talked to said that they would fold. I had the thought of that it makes chips, but is it really good ICM? So again, it's one of those like, what is your goal? And of course, my goal is not just to min cash, but the first goal in a tournament is always to cash first. So I'll always kind of remember that one because I ended up limping into day 4 with 6.5 big blinds. Then I drew the big blind, so that was kind of a disaster because the only way I wasn't going to make it, my plan going into day 2, once I made that fold and came into day 4, with 6.5 bigs was I'm going to fold everything but aces. So even pocket kings, I'm just going to fold. And it was going to be very, very painful to do it. And, you know, I still don't know what would have happened if I got dealt kings.
You really would have done that?
I do think I would because I made up my mind ahead of time that I would. But, you know, like, let's say it folded to me in the small blind and I had kings. Like, could I really do it? 7 away with 6.5 bigs. I mean, I guess at that point I'd have 4.5 bigs because I took the blinds. I don't know. I know I could muck like jacks or ace queen. That'd be fine. If I really got 2 kings or like ace king suited in that spot, would I have the ability to just muck? I don't know. I think I would have. That was the plan. Luckily, I never got tested in the sense that I never got dealt anything. I literally just blinded out. I made the money and ultimately got my last 3.5 big blinds in for a triple up. And I had 11 outs and I bricked. And, you know, we busted for a min cash, like 1,300th and something. But my expectations coming into day 4 were quite low, so it wasn't as disappointing as normal, but it is always disappointing. So, you know, I'll remember the Brian Yoon hand with the ace-6 simply because, yes, if I had called and busted, he ultimately had king 3, by the way, is what he had. He showed me king 3. So I think he jams most of the deck, so his hand is not even that relevant. If he's jamming most of the deck, I guess it kind of matters, like I'm going to be ahead more. But I already knew I was ahead because of the live read. I just think about that because, you know, if I called and won, who knows, maybe I would have spun. But if I called and lost, you know, I would have missed out on 15K and I wouldn't have had this, you know, stat padding of like, well, I've cashed 6 out of 12 mains, 6 out of my last 9, 3 in a row. And I'm a little bit of a stat whore. I like kind of like, you know, part of the tournament fun is kind of padding the stats. You know what I mean? It's kind of fun to like look at like your earnings. And I have a good idea of what I'm in for. Most players are stuck in tournaments, so Hendon Mob doesn't really mean anything. They can have 12 million in earnings and be stuck 3 million. I'm pretty aware of how much I'm up in live tournaments lifetime because I track my numbers. So it's kind of fun, like a video game, just to like know where you're at and tack on like final tables or bracelets, which I have none, or main event caches and things like that. But
I think if the kings came up in the spot you were describing before, I think you would have either tank folded or just snap put the money in. I don't think you could have just gotten there like, oh, kings, nope. Like I think you would have sat there with your hand on your head like, am I really going to do this? And be like, all right, you know, fine. This was the plan. Fuck it, I'm folding. Or you'll say fuck the plan and immediately put the money in.
You know, you're probably right because it would be to my benefit to tank anyway, although we went hand for hand pretty quick into day 4. So tanking's probably something I'd be doing with any of my hands. I think you're right. I ultimately, depending on the spot. Now, if I got dealt the kings under the gun, I think I would find the fold because I have no fold equity, and I know that like ace whatever is going to call, and I'm just out. And if it's like if I'm not taking the Brian Yoon spot the night before, why am I taking this spot, right? Mm-hmm. Because sure, I could get called in a much better spot here, but I can also just like be a 2-1 favorite and just be out of the main, even closer to the money after folding that spot. So if it folded to me on the button or the small blind, it'd be a different story. I would probably still be tanking right now and thinking about what I'm supposed to do.
When I cashed in 2012, we went hand for hand. I think it was one hand. It was glorious.
That's great.
I had chips, but like I also like it wasn't going to take a lightning bolt to knock me out of the tournament.
Sure.
So when they go hand for hand and they stop everybody, I expected this to take, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes. Can they take that long?
Oh, yeah. Last year, I think we took almost 2 hours. Because remember, when you go hand for hand...
It takes forever.
Well, what they do is they let all the tables play a hand. And then any all-ins, they wait. They don't let them run the boards out. So if there's, let's say, 6 all-ins... what the staff does is, I believe it's Jack Ethel, the tournament director, he goes around with like all the media crew with the microphone, announces the action and says, all right, we do have 6 all in, so we're going to go to each table. And then he goes one by one and he's like, pocket jacks versus ace-9 suited, pocket jacks is at risk. And then they run the board and announce it. So every hand doesn't take the 2 minutes that they take off the clock. Every hand, if there's 6 all-ins, I mean, that could take 25 minutes alone to go to each table. And then again, if there's not an elimination, so we had 4 all-ins in hand 1 when we went hand for hand, and none of them were eliminated. And then we had 6 all-ins, and this is when we were 2 away in the second round, and two were eliminated, or 3 were eliminated, sorry, including Chris Moneymaker. And then they pay the bubble, they do this bubble pay thing. So it takes a while. I mean, honestly, if you have a medium stack where you're really not like supposed to play many pots, like if you have a big stack, you want to just open every hand. You just want to punish the bubble, open every single hand. And I've been fortunate enough in other tournaments to do that quite often, but not really in the main event. I never seem to have a pile of chips on the bubble in the main, not yet anyway. It'll happen one day for sure, and I'll get to experience that. But I've been in this spot or close to it. Last year, I actually did make what would probably be considered an ICM punt. We were 5 away from the money, and I had 12 big blinds, and it folded to the small blind. And it was actually a person who's currently at the main event final table that airs this week, or I should say they play it this week, Michael Gagliano. He's a longtime grinder, good player, well-known. He's a Jersey guy, East Coast guy. So Gags I know who he is, and he has like 900K, which I don't remember how many bigs it was, but it was a pile. This is last year, 2025. And I have 12 bigs, and I'm in the big blind, and I have ace-queen. And it folds to him, and Gags just shoves. Now, I have 12 bigs. I can fold, go through the blinds. I can just literally fold my way to the money always. I had more than twice of what I came in this year with. But with 12 bigs, I can actually spin my stack. And, it probably didn't hurt that I won $1 million the week before in the 10K PLO and was feeling a little more pumped up. Bitcoin had a 1 in front of it, not a 6. So I was a lot richer a year ago. And for whatever reason, I know he's shoving the deck. I would shove the deck. So I make the call. He has 10-7 off. He flops a gutter, and I hold. And I fade it, and I double. And ultimately, I end up going on to make day 5, which was my deepest day run, not my deepest place that I finished before I busted. So I could have busted right there, and I think that would actually have been probably a similar punt as calling off with Brian Yoon, maybe worse. Honestly, that sounds like it probably would have been worse. So,
do you think a heavy percentage players of the field just go ICM, schmicm, and they just play as if there is no such thing as ICM?
I think a large portion of the field is unfamiliar with what they're supposed to do in these spots. I think the professionals probably lean towards playing too tight, because you do need to remember too that the min cash is actually 15K. And it's a $10,000 buy-in. So it's actually only half. It's a 1.5x cash, which is actually pretty low.
Yeah.
If this was a $20,000 cash, you should be more mindful of the ICM considerations. I do want to also point out, both last year and this year, I was the final person in a must-cash last longer for the main event for a pool. So I got an additional $8,000 if I cashed this year, and last year was about $17,000. So for me personally, and I'm sure there were some others out there, I actually had extra incentive to cash. So that's got to be factored in, and that was also factored into my decision both with Brian Yoon and, my thought of only going with aces, and same thing last year. It makes my call off with ace queen probably worse. But I would say that the field probably doesn't know what they're supposed to do. I think most of them are probably going to play too tight, but then there's going to be people that don't understand. They're going to think, well, I have ace queen, and this guy raised the cutoff, and I've got 20 bigs, which is normally you just jam from the button. But, in the main event on this situation, I would just fold.
Was ICM even a thing in 2012?
It was known. It wasn't as prevalent as now. There's been so much data that's come out with GTO and theory and all the solvers and stuff, and ICM has kind of followed suit after. I would say that it was known by the top players, but not something that was discussed as much. I mean, there were ICM chops back then, so it was a thing. People knew what ICM was, but they didn't understand how you were supposed to play because nobody was using solvers in 2012, other than maybe the Germans and Ike Caxton. So, nobody was aware of how tight you're supposed to play. I mean, even now, I think the biggest mistake most big pros make, and probably one of the separators from top tournament players versus middle of the pack good tournament players, including myself, even though I'm aware of it, I'm not as studied on it as I would like to be. I think that people don't realize when you're a medium stack at a final table just how fucking tight you have to play. And cash game guys would probably just lose their mind. They're like, wait a second. We're just mucking sixes from the cutoff.
I can see myself.
Wait, the cutoff opens and we're in the small blind with 2 8s and we're just folding? What is going on here? There are some spots that are pretty wild. And then from the other perspective, when you have all the chips, it's kind of insane how liberal you get to be with your range and just put it in. Now, it's a little different. The ICM comes in the most at the bubble and then at the final table. And then a lot of the middling part of the tournament, there isn't a whole lot of ICM because the pay jumps become pretty minimal. But in the main event, all the jumps get kind of big from a real dollar perspective.
Yeah, the further you go into the main event caches, the number of people being paid gets smaller and the increases get larger.
Right. And in actual dollar amounts especially, because, again, this is a $10,000 big field buy-in, whereas, typically, say you're in, the monster stack, I mean, the difference between getting, 400th place where you cash to 32nd might only be $5,000 or $6,000, but it's 5 buy-ins, and I'm just speculating numbers. But in the main, I mean, if you're talking about 5 buy-ins, I mean, that's $50,000 in real money difference. Mm-hmm. The difference between cashing $50K and $100K, that's a lot of real dollars. So in the main event, I think particularly people pay more attention to the jumps. And then it's just a special tournament. It's a freeze out and it happens once a year, and it's so special that once you're in there and you're deep, you just don't want to bust. You don't want it to end. It's once the ride ends, you have a whole year before you get to get on the ride again, and it's just you can't just jump back in with a fast pass like you're at Disneyland. You got to wait 360 more days to re-ride the ride, and it's tough because you want to walk that balance of performing at the highest level and maximizing your opportunity, but enjoying it and staying in the tournament as long as possible.
Yeah, it was a special feeling being in that tournament, and once you got near the money, and especially in the money. But yeah, like I said, I ran pure to have hand for hand last for one hand.
Sure.
There were 5 coolers. I don't remember what they were, but there were 5 coolers all in pre, and whoever was at risk, they all just lost.
Right.
And it was over just like that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a part of bubbles where we're one away, and this was a bubble in the Poker Go studio earlier this year. I think I got 4th place ultimately. I had 1 big blind on the bubble. I was the second shortest stack. I had 1.5 bigs. Me and one other guy were just sitting on nothing. And there were 22 all-ins collectively during the bubble, and 21 out of 22 of the short stacks won.
Oh my God.
And we're just what the hell is going on?
That's not even fair.
And I believe it was a 5K buy-in. It might have been a 10K buy-in. So, I mean, again, it's 5 or 10,000 in real money, but it's not a matter of people just again, we're there's 3 tables. It's not a main event where there's thousands of tables or hundreds of tables. I mean, this is the Poker Go studio where the whole field is 120 people, 130 people. So 22 hands and 21, and I was one of them. I managed to triple up or whatever, and ultimately spun my 3 bigs into a final table, which again is just you never know. You always got to fight. But it was wild just like how long it took, because I felt like I dwindled down because all the other short stacks kept doubling and then I just wasn't getting a hand. So bubbles can take a while. So yeah, that's a quick one to go one hand of hand for hand and lose 5 out of 5, but it definitely happens.
Yeah, I just was asking about ICM because at that time I don't remember thinking anything about ICM, and I'm not saying I would have gotten it right. It wasn't even on my mind. I think a lot of players instinctively figure out that they're going to play a little tighter than normal, but
Sure.
But ICM shows us that it's astonishing how tight you should play in certain spots.
Yeah, exactly. And again, like when it comes to ICM considerations, it's happening right around the bubble and then not really again until the final table. So, like where you busted in, the only things with those spots that people are good at now, which is, becoming a bit of a problem, is people pay attention to the pay jumps now. So, they'll go all in except for like one chip, and they'll tank as they do it, and then they'll tank to call their last chip just to make sure they make the pay jump.
Tacky bullshit.
I mean, typical tournament stuff. I really love what the main event did this year. Did you know that they implemented time shot clocks and time banks on day 7 out of nowhere?
Oh,
so
I did not know that.
In the tournament rules, it specifies they have the right to introduce those at any point if they think the tournament is becoming too slow. So players were tanking so much, and this is becoming a problem year after year. And again, it's somewhat understandable. This is life-changing money for so many people. And their thought is, I don't care if the rest of my table doesn't like me for a little while. This is like $21,000 in real money. This is $30,000, whatever it is.
Yeah, but you know what? If you want to be the world champion, make up your fucking mind and let's go.
I get it. And from a cash game perspective, trust me, I get it. I mean, I run a private cash game where, you need to play fast, and you got to make quick decisions. Otherwise, people get impatient. So I totally get it. And I, try not to be someone who does that. I try to be pretty reasonable. But obviously, you got to do the things that benefit you. For instance, if your table's about to break and you're under the gun +1, you got to tank in that spot for like 45 to 50 seconds, and people are looking at you kind of crazy, like, what is going on? He has tons of chips. Why is he tanking? It's because I know that they're breaking our table, and I'm not going to, let myself take the big blind because I've got plenty, meaning 31 bigs, but why would I stick 2 bigs in and then go to a new table where, I'm possible to draw the big blind again? So it's just little pro moves that are kind of lame and kind of scummy and scammy, but, it's part of the game.
You have to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, these KG dynamics have nothing to do, the game itself, but you'd be stupid to not at least be aware of these things.
You have to do it if everyone else is doing it.
Yes.
If you're not doing it and they are, you're losing EV. That's the problem. It's kind of like
the steroids in baseball.
Yeah, it's one of those things like keeping up with the Joneses, right? I would prefer nobody did any of this. I would prefer there was no, markup. No tournament player could sell at markup. But
yeah,
I'm not going to just not do that because no one does. That being said, I rarely do sell at crazy markup. I'm pretty reasonable if I sell any tournament action. I don't sell too much tournament action unless I'm playing bigger stuff and just want to lay off some exposure. But or if I just want to give friends a fun sweat, to sweat me or something. But yeah, I mean those little things in tournaments. So in terms of ICM, in your spot where you're busting, the only thing you got to pay attention to on day 4, day 5 is just the pay jumps. The actual ICM about your range and how tight you should play, that's not really a factor in those situations because the pay jumps are pretty minimal.
And something this is making me think about is how the cash games during the World Series, the waiting lists are 100 names long. You could be there for hours if you don't time it right. Then some guy shows up, tips someone at the podium, and he just gives him a seat. And I think that's bullshit, okay? This is a formal waiting list, all right? I don't care if you're a reg, fuck that. You can't just tip your way to the top of the list. But with all these other people doing it,
right.
I started doing it because you guys aren't enforcing the rules, and I'm just lighting EV on fire unless I start doing these tacky things as well.
You start realizing, giving them $20 to get in 12 minutes instead of playing by the rules and waiting an hour and 20 minutes as you see people leapfrog you, you might as well do it because the sooner you get on the table and take hands, the more EV you're earning. And when you're sitting around, with your phone and your dick in your hand, there's really nothing going on. So yeah, I agree with that. It's honestly, it's kind of ironic. I run, me and 2 other friends run this game at Aria. I was one of the people who years ago really disliked the idea of private games in a casino. And now here I am running one, and some people could say that's hypocritical, but I don't. It's more of the line of thinking, as you just said. It's the games have evolved, especially here in Las Vegas. Mid-stakes public games are dead. 5-10 and 10-20, they're just so bad now. The games are tight. They're boring. They're Euro-infested. They're for years have just dried up. And what's happened is as the private games started popping up, they started taking VIPs and recreationals from these games who are not having fun because the regs are boring and don't give a shit about anything but their own EV. They're not there for other people. They don't think about the longevity of the game, and therefore the games have died. And now they're sitting around, I can't get into this private game, and these games suck. Well, you did this. You created this.
They're neglecting a part of the EV, which is to engage the customers.
Exactly. And the higher you move up in stakes, the more you are expected to be an entertainer. I've always thought, as a poker player, what is my purpose? I don't really do anything for the world. I don't really provide anything for mankind. I'm essentially an entertainer. I'm an entertainer in the sense that my goal is to make sure that all the people that play in my game have a great time and despite losing money want to come back. They want to come back and have fun. They want to come back and play my game that I'm in. I'm not talking about now running a private game. I'm talking about even when I played public games. I was always someone who tried to have fun at the table, talk a lot, engage, and in turn, I was able to be one of the people that found my way into private games when that started existing, and now ultimately being a host in one of them, which, again, if I could go back in time and prevent all private games from existing, I would. But now that we're here and we're in the economy we are in with poker, I, of course, am happy to host a game that, people can have fun in, good energy, good vibes, good other people that want to play with one another. One of the players who plays in our game the other day was having really bad luck for 2 days straight. And he said, I've been getting my ass handed to me for the last 28 hours, and I'm still having a great time. I told my wife today that I can't wait to play again. I want to hear that, because that means that despite losing the money, which always sucks and always, makes our mood a little worse, he is enjoying his experience in our game. The other hosts, myself, and all the other players that we are able to get into the game are giving him and each other a proper experience to where you can have fun even when you're losing, which eases it and honestly probably prevents a little bit of tilt, because if you can still enjoy yourself, you're probably not going to tilt as hard, which means you're not going to be as mad later, and you're going to want to come back and play, and you're going to have more opportunities to get your money back.
The whales would rather lose $50,000 and have a great time than lose $10,000 to a bunch of point Xers who are targeting them.
Of course, yeah. They say, I know plenty that say that. I used to experience it. I watched VIPs that would play in games, and there would be someone that pissed them off, and they're like, I'm never playing here again because of you. And then I would have to talk to them and say, hey, listen, when we get a game together, I'll make sure it's fun. You know what I mean? And that's what happened. And now you get all of the private game people, the private game hosts. They're the ones attracting the fun regulars, the fun professionals, and the VIPs and recreationals to play their games. Now, there's a lot of private games now, so that's a different problem. There's oversaturation in the market a bit here in Vegas because, we're one of two regular private games. Table One runs during the day. We're the MBN game that runs at night. We've actually been collaborating with them over the past month or so and looking forward to having that happen in the future where we can get along well and work together. But, there's another game in Aria. There's 4 in the Win. There's games at Venetian. There used to be at resorts. There's private games all over. And then there's all these pop-up private games where people come to town and try to run our game during the series, once or twice, here and there a week. So it's a lot of competition, but ideally there is no competition. You just all run a good game and work together because there's plenty of people that want to play poker.
God damn it, I'm still in the 2-5 player pool by choice, of course. And I feel like since it's clearly the worst player pool in terms of social dynamics and all the things we're talking about, whales would never want to play in a 2-5 game, not because of the stakes, because of the people.
I think in general you're right, but again, that can change too, because when I played 2-5, whether I did it for fun or by choice like you are, there were times in my career where I played a lot of 2-5 where I was kind of taking more of a break from poker. When I worked on a crypto business, I was playing a lot more 2-5 and then just 5-10 when the game was good. Or if there was no 5-10, I was happy to just play 2-5. I just wanted to get my poker fix and make a little side money. I always thought that like the energy with the right people could make a great 2-5 game. There's a handful of guys that are just very good at that, but in general, you're right. The self-interest of 2-5 professionals and obviously the level of recreational playing a 2-5 game versus like a 25, 50, 100 game is quite different, but they're all kind of looking for the same thing. They just have deeper pockets or more extra money to spend.
Yeah, and I hate the 2-5 player pool more than anything in the world. Yet at the same time, I need to be there because if I couldn't complain about it, I wouldn't know what to do. So
you wouldn't have the podcast.
Right. I as much as I hate it, I need it. So it's
this is your therapy.
Right, this little sort of double-edged sword. I've got a question about the Must Be Nice game. So you mentioned some of the name players at the start. So of all those name players, like who were you like the most starstruck to be sitting against? Be like, wow, I can't believe I'm actually playing this guy. Was it Dwan?
Actually the night Dwan played with us, or the 2 nights, I wasn't there. I was in Florida, but I had played with Dwan once before. I don't want to sound like, oh, I'm too cool for school, but I don't get very starstruck anymore when it comes to poker stuff. I just don't. I'm 18 years in full time, and, I've made millions of dollars playing cash and tournaments at this point. And, I'm not saying I'm holding on to all of that because you got to live and spend money and bad investments and degenning and whatever else, right? But I've made, a good living.
$800.
Yeah, exactly, right? How much did he make in his career versus what he had? But so it's not to sound cocky or whatever. Something that's kind of cool is just becoming, friends with some of these people. I wouldn't call it starstruck as much as you get to really experience some of them as real people, meaning I had dinner at Jennifer Harmon's house last night. Jennifer Harmon is a legend. She is a Hall of Famer. Until Chrissy B came along recently, who I'm also friends with Chrissy, Jen is the greatest woman poker player of all time, but she's also just one of the greatest poker players of all time. She was in the corporation, that played Andy Beal. She was one of those people.
I read that book. It's a good book.
Yeah, and her stories are just amazing. She's been around a while. She's just a legend, and, knowing her on a personal level now and being, honored to call her my friend, and it's stuff like that. Sean Deeb and I have become friendly in the past, 6 months or so. Deeb's obviously a legend of the game. He's a future Hall of Famer. I think he's eligible this year again. I'm not sure if he'll get in, but he should. He's one of the 3 or 4 guys that absolutely is on the top tier list. And this guy, I think he has 8 or 9 bracelets now. He won another one this summer. He's just a legend. And, getting to know him and just interact with him on a fun social level, have wine with him, share food with him, hear stories, you just realize it's not so much starstruck, but it's wow, these people are just very cool people. They've been around and they have different stories, and the same way that I'm sharing my fun stories, they've got fun stories, and I really enjoy that. I enjoy, it's not about starstruck, because I also enjoy fun recreational players that have just insanely fun stories from their business or some backroom card game they used to play with a bunch of drug dealers. You know what I mean? I want to hear that stuff. Part of high stakes is honestly the people. But yeah, I wouldn't say there's one. Nick Wright, I'm a huge sports guy. Having Nick in the game is super cool for me. He's not a professional poker player. He's a recreational player. But this guy is living the dream job I had as a kid. I was my goal was to be on Sports Center and talk about sports. And he's one of the most well-known people in the world to do that. So that type of stuff's super cool to me. I don't know if there's one player that I would say I'm starstruck by or wow, that was so cool to play with them.
And Jennifer Cook?
Yeah, Jen can cook. She doesn't do it very often. It was a very special occasion, but she's a fantastic cook.
Well, good for her then. And yeah, the corporation Mike mentioned a few minutes ago, there's a book called The Professor, the Banker, and the Suicide King, which is about this billionaire banker named Andy Beal from Texas, who I think they were playing as high as 102,000 limit against a bankroll of $15 of the top pros from the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And I think I heard a story. He lost, I forget how much money he lost to them. And he lost a lot of it to Ivy. I think he ended up getting all of the money back from the Bellagio because the corporation, like, they're not allowed to, like, team up against him and share a bankroll.
I never knew that. That's
I think I heard that's how this was all resolved. Like, in the book, it doesn't say anything about that.
No,
it's just,
James McManus wrote that book, if I recall.
Yeah, I forgot who wrote it. But it's amazing reading how they beat him. And then I read later on, oh, yeah, he just got all the money back anyway.
That's pretty wild.
I know.
Didn't know that. It's funny because
this guy, Andy Beal, is a billionaire, and he would fly coach. He would always fly economy from Texas to Vegas. $1 billion, and he still doesn't want to fly first class.
Yeah. I mean, that's how rich people stay rich, right? Like, they don't spend their money. You know, probably private flying must be one of the more expensive things. And I know he's still around, too. He lives in Texas. He has Beal Bank in Texas. There's a guy who plays in my game that, you know, has a relationship with people that have a relationship with him. So it's always interesting hearing that type of stuff. But, just some of the legends in the game that have played with us and play the game. And that's kind of the cool part about opening up shop at one of the top casinos on the Strip, which is Aria, and playing in Table 1 and playing in that room. And, you know, every now and then, I've been on a downswing this summer in the cash game. And I sometimes will, like any player, feel a bit victimized, like, oh, I run so bad, I feel sorry for myself. And then I sit there as I'm eating like a lobster tail from John George that was delivered to me at the table. I'm in the middle of the glass Table 1 room that used to be called Ivy's room, which, you know, that might be someone, even though I don't think he's particularly the best at No Limit anymore, if I were to sit with him, I might be more starstruck because he was kind of my first big, like guy.
Everybody loves Phil Ivey.
Yeah, and he's just like, if he were to come sit with us, just the aura of him sitting there, you know what I mean, would be pretty cool. I've met him a couple times, but never had a chance to sit at a table with him. But I just sit there and think to myself, how younger me, you know, 2009 was my first professional year, and I was 23. I'm 40 now. How younger me would think you got second in a $10,000 world championship for a bracelet. You have made back-to-back year final tables. You've catched 3 straight main events, 6 main events. Like, when you start like thinking you're running a private game with some of the biggest stakes in Vegas, not the biggest, but some of the biggest stakes with great people and sharing the biggest room where high stakes happen at one of the biggest casinos on the Strip. And this is your life, you know, and you have the ability to say, I'm on this 6-figure downswing, but I'm still here. I'm still in action. I'm still pumping, and I'm not like, you know, begging for change. I mean,
life could be worse.
Yeah. And just, you know, stepping into that gratitude every now and then, you know, just experiencing the fact that, you know, younger me would look at me now and be like, holy shit, that is making it. And, you know,
be jumping for joy if you knew you were going to do like even like 1/10 as good as that.
Yeah. And so it is something to think about every now and then, and something I try to think about, particularly when I'm kind of running bad or feeling sorry for myself, is just taking a look at where I'm at. Okay, well, I'm feeling sorry for myself in a glass high-stakes room with a lobster tail in front of me from a gourmet chef with a bunch of very awesome people that are well off and well-to-do at one of the biggest casinos on the Strip in Las Vegas, Nevada, as opposed to some dinky smoke-filled room playing 8-16 limit hold'em in Arizona, where, you know, I started. And, you know, it's just a long way. And like, to think about that sometimes, like, I have to like allow myself to like give myself some grace and let myself breathe, you know. And I'm very hard on myself, and when I go through downswings, I'm always looking for the things I could be doing better. But yeah, it's important to like show some gratitude. So I thought about that the other day when I was sitting there just kind of staring off into space after I took another bad beat. And then I just kind of started thinking about that, and it made me in a better mood. You know, it helped me keep my mentality on even keel.
Yeah, poker gets us down sometimes, no matter who you are. But yeah, I remind myself from time to time as well that I'm in my 19th year, and I've had the freedom to wake up and do whatever I want basically every day. I mean, I took a little time away from poker a few years ago and dealt a little bit, but I wanted to have the job. I wanted the schedule. I didn't need it. I wanted it. So even though I had to go be at certain places at certain times, this was my idea. So it didn't really feel like that.
Sure. I mean, how many dealers do we see or know that are former players? And you don't even know that sometimes. You know, I've met dealers where they're like older, right? They're like 50, 60. And I find out in the 80s, they had 7-10 years of professional poker. Like, they're like, oh yeah, I was a pro for 7 to 10 years. Like, not like a year, like 7 to 10, like long careers.
Yeah.
Most people don't make it 18, 19 years professionally like you and I. I know you had a few years off in between, but like being in that...
Hey, I won the break. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, but I mean, you chose to walk away. It wasn't like you were out of action due to like not being able to play. And that's the difference. Like a lot of people are out of action because they just can't. You know, they go broke and whatever. And obviously that's a big part of it. I've gone broke in poker. And, you know, it's relative, right? Like there's always like, how broke are you? But like I've definitely been pretty broke. And it's happened. And I just think that sometimes we got to like acknowledge like what a nice spot we're in to be able to say where we're at. I mean, I'm running the MBN game with two very good people, Nick Lohr and Benton Blakeman. They are top-notch human beings, very good poker players in their own right, and honestly, just very good game runners, highly integrity-filled people. I'm very honored to call them two of my best friends and my business partners to host the game with, and then Art Parman and Blast and Justin Young all run the Table 1 game that plays in the morning, and we've been collaborating with them. And, you know, those are good guys as well. So I'm just very fortunate to be in the position I'm in, and I try to remind myself of that when things are not going as well as I like. And despite all that, I also have a 7-year-old son who to me is the world. I've got a lovely girlfriend who I'm very in love with. So life is very, very good, no matter how hard it might seem sometimes.
Yeah, so now that he and I were almost done flexing for a second, I'll just tell you guys about my most starstruck moment playing other players. When I was like 26, I think, one night playing 10-20-40, Brian Rast, Phil Locke, and Antonio Aria all showed up at once. And they were like drinking, but they were playing. And, you know, it was nuts sitting in a game with those three guys. Sure. Rast was on my direct right. I got Phil Locke pissed off because I was tanking too long. There was a spot where it went under the gun limps, Ryan Rast over limps. I raised to 240 with pocket tens. Then there's a limp 3-bet from under the gun. And Brian Rast limp 4-bets. That was the most bizarre part of this whole hand.
He over limp 4-bet.
Yeah. And I was thinking for a while. I was like, well, I still got the limp 3-better to worry about as well. I really shouldn't have been thinking about this at all. I think it's just it's an easy fold. But, like, you know, I was only in Vegas a few years, and this is my chance to tank and be as dramatic as possible. Hey, look at me, I'm tanking. Look how deep I'm thinking. And that's when Phil Locke started, like, grumbling under his breath, like, just everybody's an expert now. It's just everyone thinks it's like watching paint dry. And, of course, I folded, and the limp 3-better folded too, so Brian Rast won that hand, and I don't know what anybody had.
I mean, his line seems pretty strong, but I get it. I think, like, you would normally, like, if you saw this with a bunch of randoms, you'd snap fold your hand, but given it's Brian Rast...
This is my chance to be a hero.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, look...
Maybe.
I've died the hero a couple times in poker, one being on TV in the main event on the bubble, my first main ever to Negreanu, so we definitely can level ourselves in those spots. I think... Had you just been up against 3 random opponents, you don't think twice about folding. But because it's Rast and you know it's a small game for him and he's capable and all that, it's like something to think about. You get to be a hero and punish. Like, what a spot if you just rip it in and he just snap folds, you know? Like, if you just, like...
Exactly.
You know?
Be a highlight fist-pumping moment.
Yeah.
So Mike mentioned that he's been broke before, and when I met Mike, I was like 26, 27. I met him through mutual friends. We had never played poker together, but everyone vouched for him as a good guy, and I didn't understand why he was broke, but I came to him and offered him a deal and see if he wanted to work for a while. And I don't know, I think we did that about a year and a half. Mm-hmm. And I've backed a couple other players since Mike. All 3 times I've done it, it was my idea. I went to the other player. I mean, backing players can have disaster written all over it. You know, so many things have to go right just to have a shot at this working. And it's not really something I recommend that you try, even if you have a trustworthy guy. I mean, if he's trustworthy, I guess that's maybe that's as important as him being a good player.
For sure.
But it's if you start backing another player, like, it's not just like this passive income that always comes to you. It's just it's just another poker career you're taking on in addition to your own, and it's just you're cloning yourself and you're cloning the variance.
Yeah. Backing is not for the weak-hearted.
Is it? Do you think it's harder than playing? Because you feel like every time the guy loses, you feel like he just torched it.
It can be. It can be because there is so much trust that has to go into backing. So like you mentioned, you'd much rather like back. Like, so to me, I'd rather back someone that I trust who's a barely winning player than someone who I think is one of the goated players but has all kinds of like side issue problems with strippers or drugs or gambling or pitting or sports betting or whatever, because that money is eventually going to get taken. That money is eventually going to get torched off. You're never going to know if the money got punted away in blackjack or at the game. So it doesn't really matter how good they are if they never like win on the stake and sustain it. You know what I mean? So most people need backing because of that type of thing. You know, why do people need backing? Well, oftentimes it's because they're very talented, very good, but they can't hold on to money. I think when you came to me, I was playing mostly 2-5 and some even 1-3 at that point. And I had played those bigger stakes before, but I was in a position where I had some health issues the year before, spent some money, and then I was just on a downswing. I've always been a bit of a bankroll nit too. I've always just been someone that played lower than their stakes. You know, I think you can relate. And at the time, I wasn't definitely not rolled to play like 5-10, but there were plenty of people with the money I had that probably would have and did. But yeah, I thought it would be cool. I had never been back to that point. I wasn't sure how I'd feel about it. Obviously, we had mutual friends and there was just a trust thing. And, you know, it worked out pretty well. You know, I think overall we did fine on the stake. And then what I would say is when it comes to backing, I currently back a few people. And it is stressful because you do have to worry about an entire other person, their psyche. You know, are they winning? Are they making mistakes? Are they game selecting properly? Are they actually like being truthful? Are they holding on to the money? What's going on in their life when they're losing? If they're on downswings, can they afford to pay their life expenses so they can play properly at the table? You know what I mean? So when you're backing someone and they're losing and they're in makeup, it's really tough because for the player, you're already being backed, which means you probably don't have a ton of money. Or your money's working for you in investments, which is another reason people would take backing. So they can invest their money into, let's say, cryptocurrency or stock markets or something like that. That is a good reason to be in a position to be backed. And those are probably your best scenarios when people are like that. But that's a unique breed. Most people would rather bet on themselves than other things. So when you're backing someone and they're in makeup, you have to worry, how much longer does this person have to pay their expenses? They haven't won in 3 months and they're $30K in makeup. So like, are they about to be homeless? And if people get their backs against the wall, that's when nefarious things start to happen, right?
Yeah, I forgot to mention, I was backing Mike to play 5-10. And as I said, I never even played with Mike. But when you meet other poker players, you can kind of tell who's sharp and who's like okay and who's a fish just based on feeling out the conversation. It was just like any other live read you make at the table. So I thought Mike would be fine. And I've had the same wonders as well with other players when guys were losing for a while. You know, I'm thinking the same thing. They needed a stake, so they're obviously not cash rich at this moment. And yeah, I started holding my breath. I was like, is he getting close to the bottom? Like how much longer can he do this?
Right. Because it's kind of like, well, how much longer can they do it in a good mental state where they aren't worried about so much of the money? Do you have to worry about them doing something like stealing from the stake or like lying about numbers because they have no money? Or just how much longer do I want to go deep? Because like, I mean, how much makeup are you willing to let someone go into? And that's another discussion because let's say you got a player who's 40,000 in makeup. Well, playing 5-10, you know, a good year, like a solid good year could be, depending on how much volume they put in, 150 to 200K in earnings. So if they're 40K in makeup halfway through the year, that means there's only half the year left. So realistically, best case scenario, there's like maybe 100 to 125K available to win, and then 40 of that goes towards the makeup. So when they start crunching the numbers, it's like they're only going to make, you know, maybe 40K for the entire year themselves. And that's if they play it like top level and run top level. You know, making 200K for a year in 5-10 is not expected. That's like high end. You know, if you can make 100 to 150, that's a pretty solid year, you know, if you're playing a lot. So you have to kind of decide like when to cut them, and then it's like you just eat the makeup. If you cut someone in makeup, you just eat it. And I've had to do that before. And, I made the decision that like, you kind of have to just decide you don't want to chase bad money with good money. And sometimes that happens. And sometimes you got to ride it out too, where, I had a horse in 90K makeup and I was pretty concerned. I was shopping him around possibly to sell the stake. And what I mean by that is selling the stake for a loss, meaning, I'll take cents on the dollar. Someone will pay me 30 cents on the dollar for the stake. If he's 90K in makeup, they pay 30% or whatever, then they pay 30K roughly, and 33K, and they get
27,000. Come on.
Well, yeah, I'm saying if they were to do a third, right? But my look at that is it might be worth doing that if you think that you're just gonna not get anything back anyway. But if you believe in the player and you have the funds to keep going and they feel pretty confident. So this particular player said, I'm fine financially. Luckily, I've put a bunch of money aside. It's frustrating, but I feel like I can work through it and I want to. And you know what? We gave him a shot and he did, and he got all the way out of it. Now he's in makeup again a year later, but
welcome back.
But like, that's the ebbs and flows. And, lately it does seem like who wins in Vegas, because I think we have 5, me and my business partner that do the staking. I think we have 5 horses and they're currently all in makeup right now. But, that's just how it goes sometimes. It could also just as easily be they're all winning at the current time, which has happened. So,
and to anybody who's thinking about backing other players, the approach I took to this was I was just very hands-off. It's like, yeah, I'm the boss. So, report to me what the results are. But I think if you're entrusting a player to play for you, just let him play and leave him alone.
Yeah.
If he wants to talk about certain hands with you, then do it. Or if he needs some emotional support, then give it to him. One of my guys, he was telling me once, like, he was just venting and he was like, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be bitching so much. I was like, no. I was like, time out. I was like, this is what I'm for, okay?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not just supplying
weird.
you with the money. Like, you can come talk to me about these things. It's like, if you bitch all you want, I bitch nonstop, but just don't do it on the table. Just do it as much as you want away from the table.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you're a sounding board. So obviously it's a situation where you would rather them vent to you and get it off their chest and express their frustrations than just like lose it on the table where they're holding it in. So
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, when you're a backer, it depends on, I've been a part of backing relationships where there's a lot more hands-on coaching. So I'm like talking to the player pretty regularly where I'm actually coaching and backing them at the same time. And then I've been a part of deals where I'm just the bank. I put up the money, but they have their own guys to talk hands with. They sometimes are more studied in theory than I am because, I don't study a lot of cash game theory these days. I'm proficient with it, but like I'm not somebody that's in the lab, on a weekly basis looking up current theory and running hands on no limit hands. I've more been interested in PLO stuff and no limit tournament stuff the last couple of years when I am doing studying because it just interests me more, especially playing in private games where you're on all kinds of chaotic nodes that people just end up on anyway. So there's no way to really plug all that in without creating new simulations for every little thing.
I remember a hand when I was staking Mike. We were playing 5-10 at the Aria, and we got into a hand where I had 10-9 of spades. I think it was a single raise pot, and I was just in position. And it comes 8-3-3, and the 8 was a spade. And Mike bet, and I called. And at the time, back then, like this was seen as like a little spewy. I mean, this hand turns very well.
Yeah.
I got 3 to the straight flush at the top, overcards, everything. It's like, how can I fold this?
Yeah.
And I don't even remember who won the pot. I think Mike ended up winning, or I ended up showing him. He's like, you floated me? It's like, I'm backing you and you floated me? But it's like, look at my fucking hand. It's like, this is ridiculous if I don't float with this hand. But back then, it was like, 2 overs and a backdoor straight draw, backdoor flush draw. That was like, you don't have an immediate hand. So, like, this is seen as, like, as flopping total error, which is obviously not true.
For sure. People would think that if you peel this flop with ace-king, that you're crazy or something. Like, I mean, and obviously we come to realize, I mean, in a way, 10-9 suited is probably even better than ace-king in a lot of ways. But, like, it's like, just got a lot of, especially the deeper you are, like, this is, like, pretty clear float. in a single raise pot when you're really deep.
And even when I did it, I was like, ooh, I'm like getting really cagey here, but like this is just like an automatic peel.
Yeah, I mean, at minimum, you could argue there's some raising that happens too.
Right,
I mean,
right.
you're not repping
You're
a lot.
not folding this hand.
Yeah, we're continuing in some form. But yeah, back then, you're right, it was considered. And that was the funny thing too. I remember I always said, like, if we're ever in a game together, I just want to play. And you were of the same mindset. You and I are very similar. Like, we're not going to, like, ever collude. We're not ever going to, like, soft play. We don't like doing that. I don't like doing that. And you don't like doing that. So the fact that, you were backing me didn't make a difference. And I've played at the same table of horses before where we just end up in the same game. I don't choose to play the game, but say I'm at the casino and I happen to be playing, like, 5-10, and then they come from a must move, we'll play some hands, and I just always told them, like, hey, just play. Don't feel uncomfortable. Like, I'm going to play like as if you're anyone else, and so should you. And I've been stacked and stacked horses before, It's gone both ways, and like, that's the way it should be. But it is a little uncomfortable always, like, when you're, like, in a hand, because I think when it's uncomfortable, it's like a leveling war. You're almost, like, wondering, well, would they really continue with that hand against me? Like, for instance, when I saw you do that, I'm like, okay, I know we're not soft playing, but like at the time, like you said, floating with 9-10 of spades on 8-3-3 with 8 of spades
looks like I'm picking on you.
Looks like you're just trying to gun for me,
right?
Which in modern days, obviously, we just realize like we have to continue in some facet. But back in the day, I was almost like, what the hell, man? I mean, it's one thing to soft play, but like, what are you trying to like make me miserable? You trying to bury me in makeup here?
Right.
What's going on?
You were like kind of amused about it,
yeah,
but at the same time, you were like, really?
Yeah, but I actually fully agree with it, and not just the hand selection, but just the choice to like play your game as if I'm anybody else, and that's what you should have done, and that's what I always do. I don't really end up in the same game anymore as people I have pieces of or back, but if it was to happen, that's how I would play. I would just play normal.
Playing in Arizona once, I think it was 5-10. It was when they still had that $500 cap per betting round. Max bet. It wasn't with a guy I was backing. It was just with a friend. I had pocket fours on 2-3-6, probably a single raise pot, and I just check raised. I think I check raised my friend, or I check raised. There was a bet and a call, and I check raised and just won right there. Then my friend texted me, okay, because I was in the blind. He was like, "Can you lead out with your big hands?" He's like, because he's like, I had a really big draw. His big draw was Ace-5 of spades with a backdoor flush draw on Deuce 3-6. So first of all, this is not that big of a draw to begin with. It's obviously a real draw, but
sure,
we know what we're saying here. I texted back. I was like, I only had pocket fours, dude. I was like I didn't have a big hand. I'm just playing poker here. Like,
can you lead out?
Can you lead out? It's like, we're not doing each other favors here. I mean, so when you're playing against friends, if you guys are going to be distracted in that way, just don't play at the same time.
Yeah, that's what I recommend. Unless you're the type of friends that really like enjoy going after each other competition-wise, and the money's not going to hurt you. I mean, I've got some friends here locally that, we'll get together and play like 2-5 or 5-5. I think some of them play the mixed game at Red Rock together. They'll play like a 5-5, and it's like no limit and some like pineapple and stuff. And the whole point is like to play together and have fun and gun each other. Like, they're going after each other. They're drinking. They're having a good time. But, nobody's really losing more than a few thousand. Like, the whole point of the game is like to make some money but have fun. And if you're playing like stakes that is your normal stake and this is what you're doing to like make money, then I recommend, if you feel uncomfortable with friends, don't play at the same table. I never had a big issue with it, but I had friends that did. I had a roommate, and he and I would play at the same table sometimes when we lived together, and it just never ended well. He took it a lot worse than I did. We had a week where I remember it was like summer. I think it was 2016. It was the year that LeBron won the NBA Finals. So maybe, was that 16?
I forget what year that was.
Yeah, I think it was 2016, but it was the year that they beat the Warriors. LeBron won in Cleveland.
Weren't they down 3-1 in that
They
series?
were, yeah. It's that series where, LeBron got the block, blocked by James, and then Kyrie Irving hit the shot, and they beat the Warriors. The year they went 73-9. That was that year. They beat the Warriors in the finals.
Oh, wow.
So
I forgot they went.
I remember we were in a group setting with a bunch of friends at Tommy, what's it called? Tommy Rockers, the restaurant
right
over
off
there.
15.
Yeah, and I had a friend, Kevin, who always liked to meet up there and have a cigar and watch games. And it was like a dinner break spot when the WSOP was at Rio, but it was also just like an after, hangout. So we were there watching the game, and we had a bunch of mutual friends, and my own roommate, one of my best friends, is sitting there. He's been mad at me for like a week. And it took like watching LeBron win the finals together because we were both rooting for him. I think I had money on them, and I also just like thought it'd be cool if he like won a title in Cleveland because his Miami ones were like super teams. And we like finally got over it. He got over it. I was fine because of that. You know, it took like an NBA championship, like, you know, remarkable comeback of us sharing that as friends together for him to like forgive me for stacking him in some game that we played a week earlier. I mean, it was bad. And
I would rather lose my money to my friend than some asshole like come here and rip on about it. I mean, and if you lose the money to the guy, it doesn't mean you're not going to win it back from him someday. Yeah,
I mean, exactly. I mean, it just so happened that he ended up getting out of poker a few years later, but I mean, like, some people just take it harder. So like Dan said, I mean, my advice to the listeners is if you have like a problem when it comes to, you know, the people that you play with, you know, that you like live with or are friends with, if you're going to have like negative feelings about it or want to soft play or not play real poker, just don't play at the same table. And then there's the friends that are the opposite, and they're like, I want to play at the same table because I want to stack my friend. Like, that's the competition. That's the fun. And if you have a friendship like that, I think that's awesome.
Yeah, back in the day, my first few times I ever played at a casino, I would go up to Turning Stone with my friend. We would play in our basement as much as we could. Not only did we not avoid each other, like, we gunned for each other. Sure. We couldn't wait to fucking stack each other. Like, we're 3-betting each other with, like, I 3-bet him with queen deuce suited, flopped a queen on like queen 10 6 of spades, got it in on the flop, was good and held. And we were just like, all right, you just paid off the pot, we moved on. The biggest pot I ever lost to a friend was, well, this is one of the most devastating nights I've ever had at poker. It was New Year's Day 2014. I was up like 17,000 in a 10-20 game. Then we got some whale. We made it 25-50. And then I think it was like a 30K pot, but like 3 ways. I think I lost like 10K in this hand to a guy who I wasn't like close friends with, but we were like friends. And I just saw him the next day. I was like, hey, what's up? Like, it doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah, I mean, so I run this game, MBN, you know, the Must Be Nice game at Aria. And my two partners, Benton and Nick, we play in the game together a lot. Like, most of the time, all 3 of us are in the game. We're running the game. I mean, sometimes only 2 of us are in the game at the same time, but I mean, usually 3 of us are occupying 8 of the 9 seats. But because of that, like, we're, of course, running into hands together. We are bad beating each other. We are playing poker against each other. We are taking money from each other back and forth. I mean, you know, you might, after the fact, if you know, like, one of them is going through, like, a tougher time, it becomes a little bit harder because, like, man, I hated it that it had to be you today, that I, like, binked my 2... You know, I finally got lucky, like, kings versus aces, and it was versus you. You know, that sucks, man. I'm sorry. But that's poker, and it goes both ways, and it goes all 3 ways, and none of us soft play each other. None of us want any of that. None of us want to... Like, we all want each other to succeed, but, like, at the same time, on the felt, like, we're poker players. We're not running the game as partners. We're poker players first, and you have to play. And, you know, the other night, I put a bad beat on Benton in a pretty big hand. He was having a winning night, and I peeled ace-queen offsuit in position. We were playing stand-up game, because we play all kinds of side games. And stand-up game is where, if you don't win a hand in the 10 hands dealt, or whatever the preordained amount of hands that have been determined is, you owe a penalty of usually the amount of somewhere between $1,600 to $2,000. It depends on how many players are at the table. So I didn't have a button and he did. So I was still in a position where I could owe the penalty and he wasn't. And he opened and a few people called and I 3-bet the button to 900 with ace-queen offsuit, red ace-queen. He 4-bet me to 3,000. We're pretty deep. We're like 25 or 30K deep, I think. Maybe a little more. I kind of had a feeling he had me beat here. This is typically, like, in good poker terms, obviously a fold. But when you're playing private and you are in these scenarios where there's extra money to play for, you know, you're playing private, which means you got to give more action. You're also playing for, like, buttons, like Squid Game and stand-up game and things like this. Like, you do need to go after the money a little more often because it's essentially like an ante. So I take a flop in position. It comes deuce 3-4, I believe, 2 spades. I'm red ace queen. He checks, I check. Turn is a 3, puts 2 clubs now. So deuce 3, 4, 3, 2 spades, 2 clubs. He checks again. Now I want to start barreling him off ace king. I think a lot of his range is going to be ace king here. Sometimes like something like maybe it was 5, 3 deuce because I think it was actually a 5. Whatever it was, I thought he might have the wheel suited card, which would be his bluffs, but I think I can start barreling him off. I would check back some over pairs. So I bet. I bet he calls. So when he calls, I'm not loving it as much. I think ace king probably does have to call once. But my thought is that if the river bricks, I'm probably just going for it, repping like the pair. River's it's not an offsuit. If the river's a queen, puts the backdoor flush there. So it's queen of clubs. He checks, and I don't see a lot of value in betting here. I think his hand is mostly ace king, and if it was like some tricky, like the ace 5 or whatever it was, the pair, I think he'll probably just fold anyway. And occasionally he's got ace king of clubs. So I checked back. He had ace king of spades. So he flopped the nut flush draw with ace king, and I hit an offsuit queen to win. And now if the river had been a complete brick, I probably win this hand because I was probably going to bet 10,000 on the river, and he was probably going to fold. So the river's a king, and he checks. I'm probably not going for that one. If the river's an ace and he checks, I would probably check, but I'm not sure, to be honest, but most likely check. And, if the river's a spade, I'm guessing, it either goes check, check, or I might even bet a spade because I don't expect them to have spades very often. But I got very, very lucky. And, after the fact, I felt kind of bad because, Benton was having a good night and then, he gets fucked. But at the same time, this is
better
my
him than
village.
you.
Yeah, better him than me. It's like unfortunate but true. And I chose to play the hand, and this is where we're at. And that's what you got to do, right? There are no friends on the poker table. You can be friends, I should say, but there are no soft plays. You play, and that's what I love about our game is everyone's friendly. Everyone's friends. A lot of us do things off the table together, but we're there to win. We're there to win. We're there to have a good time, and the money does trade back and forth over time, but the goal is to win more of it over time. So,
was your roommate resentful about the fact that you took money from him, or the fact that he was maybe feeling inferior to you as a player?
I don't know. I think probably the first. I would say probably the fact that I took money from him and maybe he thought I should be soft playing him because we're friends or something. He would admit at the time and now that I was a better player than him. I don't think there was ever a time other than maybe the very beginning when we met where he thought I was not a better player than him. I think pretty early on into our careers after meeting, he knew or thought that I was a better poker player than him. So I don't think he took too much pain or in losing that sense, like an ego thing, I'm better than him, I shouldn't have lost. I think it's more so we're friends, how could you take my money or something like that.
The guy who I lost that huge hand to at quarter 50, which, by the way, that was a punt the way I played that hand, but I'll talk about that some other day. He was having a really bad night. He was on my right. And he was just said to me, rough night. I knew he was down probably maybe 10,000. I said I was up 17,000. I finished up 3,000. He went on a massive surge once we kicked up the stakes to quarter 50. He probably won 30,000. I went against my normal prerogative, which is don't play the next day after, which it wasn't a big loss, but I was up stuck 14,000. So it kind of
feels like a big loss.
It definitely felt like one. And then I lost 10 more. So that's a 24K downturn spaced across 2 sessions, but I don't know how many actual live hours of poker it was. Probably maybe between 3 and 6. Mm-hmm. That was definitely my most painful, short-term burst of losing that I ever felt playing poker was New Year's Day 2014, and then I guess January 2nd.
Yeah, Upstuck can be more painful than losses sometimes. I had a session a few months ago. I literally was up 54K in 20 minutes. We play a progressive bounty button game where once you get to a certain amount of buttons, everyone at the table owes you money. And I got up to 6 buttons very quickly. And in the meantime, I stacked a couple people. Because when you get all the buttons, it means you're winning hands. So you're incentivized to play hands. And if you get good hands with buttons, people underestimate your range. They think your range is a lot wider, as it should be, and they're usually right. But when you wake up with a real hand, that means you get to punish people. And when you are wide and you get it in against better hands, sometimes you bink because you have an overlay, because you're getting $3,200 from the table if you win the hand. And that's a huge overlay when they have an 8K stack. So I was up about 53 to 55K, I want to say, and I end up playing like a $77,000 pot, and I had been losing, and I was like, wow, I could win it all back tonight. Like, it was a game where I could win 100K. I actually got into a 70K pot. Like, I was in a pot where I would have been up over 85K if I won. Plus, I would have kept going with the buttons. I had King Queen suited versus Ace 9 versus Ace Queen, but the Ace Queen was like very short stack, so his stack kind of didn't matter. Like, whatever, he could have won the main pot. I could give 2 fucks. And I flop a flush draw on the first board and brick, and on the second board, it becomes like 10-9X. So I flop like, 2 overs and a gut shot plus a backdoor flush draw, and I brick, and I just lose the pot. And I'm still up like a good amount, but it's just so deflating. And then about an hour later, I lost another huge pot. Like 10 minutes later, I had a set versus a gutter and paid it off. And all of a sudden, I'm even. And like, I go from like up 55 on my way to up 100 to just even. And I couldn't breathe. I just couldn't breathe. It was like one of those sessions. So up stuck can be way more painful than being stuck. Because when you're stuck, you're just like, well, here I am, I'm losing, it's going to be a battle, I got to try and come back, don't have to make it all back tonight, it is what it is, one long session. But when you have a night where you're up a pile, you have thoughts of like, especially if you've been on a downswing, but really just anytime, you're just like, you have thoughts of like, this could be my biggest night ever. This could be like a record-breaking night. This could be like a, or if you're up a lot and you're about to call it in, those are the worst too, where you're like, all right, I'm playing till 10 and it's 9:40 and you're up 30K, and then all of a sudden you get into some massive unavoidable cooler, and now you're up like 6K when you leave, and you're like, you're driving home up 6,000, which if you started the night and knew you were going to win 6K, you'd be pretty satisfied, even in a game my size. I mean, $6,000 at quarter 50, even with $100 on sometimes, is a great win. It's a good average win. But when you were up 30 20 minutes ago, it feels disastrous.
Absolutely. I think when you get stuck, if I'm playing 2-5, if I'm stuck a couple thousand, I think, I can get out of this. We all think we can get our money back when we're losing, but when we're winning, that money feels like it's yours and that it can't be touched. Even though you feel like, for sure you can keep winning when you're losing. So. Yeah.
It's a weird mindset. It's like when you're winning, it's always in play, but like you kind of feel like, all right, well, I'm not going to lose back 50K.
It's because it's my night.
Yeah, it's my night. Like, I'm up 50K in 30 minutes. Like, how could I possibly lose tonight? How could I ever walk away from tonight losing? I mean, I literally had a session like that last week. I was up 17,000 and I lost 45K at the end of the night total. So I lost back 63K in like maybe 4 hours. And you have a night like that where you're just, man, those are the hard ones. I won't lie. Those hurt more than just losing, like just losing. Because when you're losing, you just kind of like, you're like, I could get it back, but like, you know what? You just like, you come to terms with like, at some point in the night, you come to terms with, I'm not going to get unstuck, and that's okay. It's one giant session. You start just like, almost like healing, like while you're at the table. You slowly just start mending your wound. Like you just feel better. You just feel like, okay, I'm going to lose. It's fine. And then every now and then you just get bailed out and double up and like come back ahead or even on the night. And that feels great. But as good as that feels, it doesn't feel as good as like getting upstuck and losing the profit at the end of the night hurts for some reason.
For me, the fear of being stuck is so much worse than being stuck. Like if we just want to get our high and go home. We just don't want to deal with the stress. It's annoying. And then, you're afraid you're going to lose. But if I get popped for some reason, or if 2 or 3 things go wrong and I'm down 700 or 1,000, now I'm just like, all right, well, it already happens. And now I got something to do. And that actually does not feel as bad as being as afraid of this happening.
Yeah.
And something else I said a couple weeks ago on the show is, I think one of the most tilting things is when you're buried, you start coming back a long way. You get back most of it, maybe half of it, maybe 3/4, and then you start losing again.
Oh, yeah.
And now you're down close to the number you were down when this first happened.
It's the false hope effect.
Yeah, that is extremely unnerving.
Yeah, it is.
And I'll tell you when I'm at my most vulnerable is when I was like playing 10-20. If I was down like 2,000, 3,000, this is when I'm most likely to make a big punt because I am not buried so much that I can't get out of this. 2,000 or 3,000, I could win that back. And when people are down, they're much more willing to get money in a marginal spot. But if I'm down 5,000 or 6,000, it was like what you said before. I'm just like, I just throw my arms, I sigh, and I just feel like I just started and I'm even. Like, it's like, all right, I'm not going to win today. Let's just do the best we can from now.
It's like you come to terms with your fate. Yeah. Like, I actually not only do that with the way I feel, like, but my mood even changes sometimes. So, like, let's say I start a session and I get buried early. And then, like, I'm just frustrated, right? I'm like, oh, my gosh, how do I get so unlucky? How do I play so bad? Whatever the case is, right? Internally, you're just like, you're on fire. And then, like, 4 or 5 hours goes by, and, you know, you're stuck even a little more, and you're just buried to a point where you're like, I'm down 22K. This game is, like, not the best right now. Like, there's no one here that's just going to give it away and get me unstuck. You know, you're going to play a couple more hours because the game's going to go a couple more hours, but you're kind of coming to terms like, hey, if I win back like 5K, great. Like, I'll leave stuck 15, whatever. But you kind of just expect this is going to be a 20K L. And then you kind of get happier because, like you said, it's like you reset. Your mind's like, all right, so, like, you're, like, more angry when you're stuck 15 than you are when you're stuck 20, ironically, you know? Because, like, you lose 5K more, you're like, well, whatever, man. I'm already buried. Like, it's already a shitty night. But, you know, all of a sudden, like, you get this, like, second wind of just, like, okay, I had my funeral, I had my little tantrum internally, and, like, came to terms with this is going to be a losing night. And now it's like I'm on a new session, and sometimes it's kind of nice when you do that because now you can, like, enjoy yourself again. Because otherwise, like, you might as well go the fuck home, you know? And that's harder to do for me because I'm running the game. So if I'm, like, in the game and I'm getting buried and I have that mentality of, like, I don't want to be there, that's hard. And luckily, you know, like I said about the player in the game the other night, how he said he was buried, but he was still having fun. Our game and our goal is to have the experience where even when you are stuck, you feel like, A, there's so much action that you can always get unstuck. But B, like, the vibes are so good that you still want to be there. You know, you're still enjoying yourself. The conversation's good. The camaraderie's good. And, of course, like, it's about winning money, but, like, it's a long game. You know, we play 3 to 5 days a week. We're there all year. So it's like, okay, like, yeah, I'm going to lose tonight, but let's enjoy the night. Cultivate some friendships and, like, hear some fun stories and create a good energy, you know, and show people that, hey, you can lose and still have a fun time. And if you set that example, you know, it's surprising how many other players will follow suit. And in turn, like the partner we dismissed, if you set the example of being miserable while you're losing nonstop and making it a miserable experience for others, they will follow suit and do that when they're losing. So what you set an example for as a host in these games, or just as an experienced player in a public game, for those of you not in private games, if you're in a 5-10 or 10-20 game and you're a reg, the way you act, the weaker regs and the recreationals, they're going to look to you. They're going to defer to you for how you act. So if you act like, hey, it's almost not like a big deal. Guidance. Yeah, they're going to be like, oh, okay, I can lose and still have fun and be, like, social. I don't have to be a prick. You know, I don't have to just be a dickhead and shut down socially. Mm-hmm. Like, you can lose and still, like, enjoy your time there, right?
Yeah, there have been times, not a ton, but more than a few, where I'm losing in a really, really social game and I feel no pain. And it's like, it's a bizarre feeling. You're amazed at how much you actually don't even really care about the money.
You're detached.
You're detached because you're enjoing the company of who you're with, which only happens so often at the 2-5 player pool.
Sure, I understand. I mean, I have the benefit of being exposed to the opportunity more to enjoy the people I'm playing with because I get to help choose who I get to play with. But absolutely, it's good to just carry that in general. And if you show that, then others will too, and the whole experience will be better for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Well, everybody, this was Mike Zulker, high stakes expert on the dynamics, and he, as much skills as he has as a player, he would not be in this position if he didn't know how to interact with his customers. I think it's a very underrated part of being a live poker player, especially with all the nerdy players buried in their iPad or playing online while they're playing. I mean, that's not a very good look But, all right, everybody. Well, thanks again for coming in, Mike. You're officially in first place again for the most visits on the Dead Money with Dan Arvin podcast.
Thanks for having me.
All right, no doubt. I haven't played much this week, or I don't think I played at all this week, but I'll be out there soon. The bug is coming back, so I'll talk to you soon, guys. We'll see you next time.